Next, I'm going to introduce Dr. Rami Razouk. He is the Senior Vice President for the Engineering Technology Group at the Aerospace Corporation, and he will give us a few opening remarks.
Welcome, everybody. We managed to arrange a beautiful Southern California day for you, just for those of you who are coming from other parts of the country. Got a little bit of rain last night just to clear the air so that you can see that, yes, there are mountains around Los Angeles that you can occasionally see. So glad to see everybody out here. Obviously, this is GSAW 2015, the 19th instantiation of this Ground System Architectures Workshop, and I'm delighted to see a great turnout this year. Just so that you know, we have about 390 registrants, which is a high for the last 4 or 5 years. I think that we would have had quite a few more attendees if we didn't still have some travel restrictions that are still ongoing. The fact that we have that many registrants certainly shows that the workshop is of continuing interest in bringing the community together. It's interesting enough for everybody in this room who all have very busy schedules to come out here and interact with their fellow professionals. So in keeping with the goals of GSAW, I was very glad to see representation from the United States government, both civil or all of civil, military, and intelligence, all three branches. We have representation from industry, from academia, and the broader international community. And I'm hoping that in the future we'll have much greater involvement of the international community in this era of globalization of the space enterprise. Having been involved in GSAW since its inception, I've had the opportunity to observe the conversation as it has evolved in these workshops over the years. So I'd like to take a minute, in keeping with the theme of perspectives on ground services, to just give you one perspective, and you'll be hearing, obviously, our keynote speaker's perspective in just a moment. Over the past couple of decades now, nearly 20 years, GSAW has explored a number of topics, generally pushing in the direction of standardization, interoperability, flexibility, and cost effectiveness, utilizing a variety of technical approaches. Early on, we were talking about product line architectures, more recently service-oriented architectures, and now everybody is, of course, talking about cloud-based architectures. Much of the motivation over those decades has been the desire to reduce the development, operational, and sustainment cost of ground systems. And today, the imperative for change is as great as it has ever been, and arguably greater. There is therefore a great opportunity for this workshop to make a difference. And I want to really emphasize that the appetite for being more open to doing things differently is very much there today, so there is an opportunity. So shame on us if we don't actually get it done. While there's been a lot of discussion in the past about the need for change to get away from stovepipes to for ground systems to more common systems, one key factor has made the situation today untenable. That change, that factor, is the growing concern over security of these systems. Nearly every day today, when you open the paper, you're just wondering who got hacked today, right? So, and in nearly every domain that you can think of, from entertainment industry with Sony, all the way to health management system with Anthem, and I'm sure today we'll have another one. Obviously, we're in the space domain. We are targets, all of our systems. Civil, commercial, and military systems are constantly under threat and attack. So we are constantly needing to look at our legacy systems and continually patch them, upgrade them, and layer them with layers of protection just to be able to manage this evolving threat. So the traditional approaches of building ground systems by buying lots of hardware with lots of spares to last you 30 years, and kind of the illusion that you're not going to modify that software or these operating systems because, after all, you know, they were designed for particular systems. Those days, that approach results in highly vulnerable systems, and if it really can't be continued. So the pace of evolution of technology and the pace of evolution of the threat demands new approaches. Handcrafting security solution for a number of custom-built systems, trying to address the threat on each of them individually, reinventing unique technical solutions to security threats is simply unaffordable today. So I'd like to just appeal to the community to focus and redouble your efforts. I know cyber and the threat discussions have been going on in GSAW for some time. Cybersecurity has been a theme here. But I would ask you to redouble the efforts to consider cybersecurity and the ease of sustainability. How do you achieve both of those objectives as key objectives for the work that you do, in addition to cost effectiveness and flexibility and all the other things that you've been thinking about over the years. So I'm looking forward to hearing about that as progress you make for this GSAW 2015. So now, for the main part of the talk, or for the main course for this meal, which is our keynote speaker. And I'm very honored to introduce our keynote speaker this morning, Major General Robert McMurray. General McMurray is the Vice Commander of the Air Force Space and Missile Systems Center at Los Angeles Air Force Base. General McMurray is responsible for assisting the Commander in managing the research, design, development, acquisition, and sustainment of space and missile systems, launch, command and control, and operational satellite systems. General McMurray has held a variety of positions in the Air Force, including Director of Space Programs in the Office of the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Acquisition, and an earlier tour here at SMC as the Vice Commander of the Space-Based Infrared Systems Wing. I'm looking forward to hearing his perspective on the role of ground systems in the Air Force space enterprise. So please welcome General McMurray.
All right, good morning, everyone. So one of the jobs that may be in my bio that I'm kind of going off script here for a minute that wasn't mentioned is one that I think I learned more about space in many ways than I have in my 3 tours at SMC. I was the System Program Director for F-16s. Now, that may not make that much sense to you when you think about it, but we spent a great deal of our time when I was at Hill Air Force Base putting in precision engagement capabilities for F-16. It was a common configuration improvement program, put glass cockpit in, but the big thing it brought was heavy capability to do precision engagement, including SASMAGI, which gets that GPS capability right there at the forefront, right at the pilot's capability. And what I will tell you is, at the time, I was talking to the wing commander, Bob Belichick, who was had the wing across the ramp, and I asked him, well, what do you think of this? And he said, look, in the history of airplanes, he said, I'm going to put stealth aside because I'm not a stealth guy. He said, there's the 3 biggest things that have come up. He said, there is the jet engine, GPS, and CSIP. And then the last 2 are tightly tied together. They allow me to look through mountains at bad guys and to hit targets with minimum exposure. And what I would tell you today is that space systems aren't nice to haves. They are expected to haves. That is the baseline we're working from. So when I think about that background and I think about our systems and the demands we're under today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the need for change. And what I want to give you is a little bit of a caveat here. So somebody out there will take this that I'm not happy with it. And that's not the case. We have fantastic people working on great systems and have delivered unparalleled capability. Systems that perform better than we expected, and we are kind of suffering a little bit from an embarrassment of riches right now. So don't take anything I'm saying as a slap against those systems. That's not where I'm going. Okay, I am extremely proud of what we have done. But at the same time, I think we have to look at a view expressed by Doug Lavero when he was here last year that I think is really kind of sets the stage for this. He says, look, in the old days, there were three things that were known about space. It was the realm of governments. It was the realm of superpowers. And it was reserved for strategic impact. It was about strategic things. It wasn't going to be in the fight until it really, really, really got bad. Today, it's a domain dominated by commercial. There are lots of governments and lots of countries in play, and it is in every fight. It brings tactical capability to every engagement. It is only logical that it will be in the escalation of any kind of conflict. So what we have to look at, and what his argument was, is how do we buy these systems? And today it's much the way that we've bought them in the past. And so we need to change. Now, it's kind of a paradox of our acquisition process that when we finally get something that's really working well, that's when we've got to look at doing something different. And that paradox, by the way, is not lost on many. And there are those who would argue what we have to do is continue to just buy what we've been buying. Just keep doing that. And in the space domain, in the space segment of our architectures, we would argue that's flawed reasoning. It's really not going to hold, and we've got to press forward. On the ground side, I would suggest that we're going to run into some economics and some warfighting issues that I'm going to talk about a little bit. Our architectures are based on a space environment, a threat environment, a budget environment that are significant, that are non-existent today. Things have changed. Okay. As we have to deal with new competitors and new threats and new issues, and as Dr. Razzouk said, as we have to think about cyber, I think that we're going to have to look pretty seriously at the way we do business. And the ground system is going to be the enabler to do it. We have lots of ideas about how we're going to change the space segment. You know, there's everything from disaggregated systems to proliferated systems to launch-on-demand strategies to hosted payloads. But the real, and they will bring resilience to a space segment, but that resilience is really meaningless without a resilient ground segment. So we're going to have to bring resilience to the ground systems, and we're going to have to do it in a way that is not every time another billion-dollar or multi-billion-dollar solution that is a proprietary solution that is inflexible and unworkable with other elements of our overall constellation. And we need to shift our focus of operations away from command and control of satellites to delivering mission effects. General Hyten had made a comment recently. He said, look, if you go to the GPS floor and you look, he says, there's 7 people on that floor that are doing command and control of the satellites. But there are only 3 that are focused on support to the users. He believes the ratio is upside down and it's wrong. if you look at, and I'll talk some more about that, but as we look at trying to shift that balance toward delivering effects and having systems that are resilient, is going to require a slightly different way of thinking, and it's going to require us to leverage all of the technologies that that are the rage of the day, but to do it in a way that provides that protection and the mission assurance that we have come to expect. As we look at those strategies that I talked about, the reason for them isn't just because we like to put cool things in space and we like to bring them. It's really that assurance of those effects being available when that F-16 pilot, when that special operator, when those people at the edge of the fight need our capability. So to bring that we have to have the resilient capabilities, and the resilient capability demands that the ground system be flexible and it's essential to missionizing that data and getting those functions that we want in the hands of the warfighter. Our current GPS system, it costs, my bet is this number is slightly low, but the estimate that I got when I asked is about $800 million of today's dollars, about $75 million a year to run, 450 people, controlling 38 active satellites. MIL-SATCOM architecture, almost $2 billion to put in place on somewhat fewer satellites, 50 million a year, 420 people. So if you compare that to an Intelsat constellation, now somebody at Intelsat will stand up and tell me this isn't exactly right, but it's pretty close. 79 satellite constellation, 2 ops centers, each manned by 3 people, 30 satellite engineers and 30 IT administrators. I'm thinking there's something we can learn there. Maybe. Just maybe. Now, I'm not saying that commercial SATCOM and warfighting SATCOM are the same, but frankly, for most of the time, they're pretty similar. You know, we have some things to worry about, some different mission requirements, but those models are so radically different that that for the intelligent but not informed in detail observer, we're missing the boat. We're not seeing the opportunities that are there. Either we are stuck in our old ways of thinking, or we are just not really thinking at all. Now, changing ground systems, I will fully acknowledge is a perilous trip. We're fighting and our track record with development is somewhat less than stellar. The end results are great, but man, the road there is awful. And I say that as a card-carrying member of the SBIRS development team. I've been there. I have seen those dark days of development. It is a hard business. When you are trying to do an extremely challenging technical development and you are in the middle of it, it seems like every problem is overconstrained and unsolvable. And yet, when in the end, we turn out pretty fantastic capabilities. Today, our OCX development for the next-gen GPS ground system, same story. Very difficult, very hard, and it's marked by challenges in information assurance, cyber protection. I would say that I'm going to talk a little bit about vision of things that we can do on ground systems, and that's great, but I will tell you one thing we absolutely have to do we have to do information assurance better. Flat out. And by that, I don't mean just more assurance, more certainty and protection, but we got to do it right the first time. We got to have a system that allows us to do that acquisition and adjust to changing requirements. Because, and that's the standard complaint, oh man, that's a moving target. Well, yeah, it is. But, we're going to have to adjust and deal with that. We've got to have a methodology that allows us to put things in place quicker, adjust to change, and bring those capabilities about with a high probability of success in a shorter period of time. So, in terms of some vision things, we have an advanced development organization that is chartered now by General Hyten to look hard at what next generation ground is. But some of the things that we are really thinking hard about is how do we reduce the antenna and the teleport footprint and increase the use of commercial systems? How do we do that to our benefit and not to the demise of the commercial systems? It's got to be a symbiotic relationship. How do we virtualize capabilities? Cryptography and front-end processing, things that we do with hardware today. How do we establish and put in place open standards so that our systems are better postured for future competition, for future change? Okay, if everybody wants it, I want some cloud-based stuff. I don't even know what that means. It's like, as far as I can tell, it's just cool. Got to have it. Okay. But this is going there. I mean, their data center structure is, it's going to be, there's data, and it's going to be out there, and it's held on hardware, but where that hardware is and where it has to be, it's not there. But I will tell you today, your leadership structure doesn't understand that. We are not ready to, we're not where we should be on that. We've got a lot of learning to do. We have to bring the joint information environment on board, and we have to become compliant with it. It's just the way that we're all going to work together in the DoD environment. We have to think about data fusion. When people ask me, what am I, where do I want to, what are my concerns? I've got three. My big concerns are launch, because that is eating half my time. It's a highly complex business, and I keep saying I can simplify this space business. I can just skip the launch. We just get the launch off the table, not stop doing that. This simplifies everything. But it's launch, it's people, because we have to have the talent. We have to convince the young people of today that this business is an exciting one to be involved in. And then it's data fusion. The ground systems are right in that. I mean, you just got to have the ground system working, and our ties into the GSAW. And that service-oriented architecture and how we do data interfaces there is going to be critical. So that future ground system has got to work with the GSAW. And then back to that cycle, the JSPOC is going to, that JMS program has got to figure out how to bring on capabilities rapidly, quickly, without requiring every time I bring on a little bit to do 2 years of dedicated operational testing, or a cycle of review that is unmanageable. Now, if we could do all that stuff, we'd be in good shape. And like I said, our advanced systems development team is charged with looking at that now. They're kind of in the middle of kind of laying out a roadmap toward how do we get to a new ground architecture. But some of the things that we're looking at are I'm blanking on the right word, but clearly extension of service-oriented architecture, malleability of TT&C would be my word. That's really probably not right, but why I need a dedicated, specific ground system to do TT&C. I'm not sure. Mission data is a whole different drill. But frankly, I've got to have adjustability in the ground system to deal with mission data from different organizations as well. Little tougher as you get more specialized, but what we'd really like to have is those things that are focused and proprietary, really focused on that mission data, and the command and control as less so. But that ground infrastructure will be critical in terms of enabling the building of resilience on orbit. It will allow us to deal with the strategy that General Hyten would like to implement, which is launch on demand or launch on schedule as opposed to launch on demand, and it'll allow us to deal with having more assets on orbit than we've had before. It's a fantastic thing. They will look hard at expanding the multi-mission satellite ops center that we have at Albuquerque, and autonomous commanding or unmanned, if you will, command and control automatic or scheduled command and control activities. I think those things will come along. We will leverage, without a doubt, DISA's data centers, as they come on with cloud-based capabilities. We'll look for the ability to host things from multiple locations. And all of those, I don't think they have to be government. It's not public. It isn't necessarily public owned or private owned. I think we'll look for the right combination the way we go forward. I think that as we get to an enterprise ground system that is more dynamic, more adjustable, more configurable, and frankly more capable, we will have a better foundation to the resilient capabilities that tomorrow's fight's going to demand. And that extension, will by extension need to move in beyond beyond those things that I've kind of seemed like my talk has kind of been focused on, satellite-specific ground system. But it'll be into the AFSCN, into the range capabilities. I think we're going to get to a level of, if you will, configurability and dynamic control that we just haven't experienced in the past. So on paper, that all sounds really good. I've probably not said as well as it could be, but it's but what we're looking for, it's easy to kind of say, from a vision standpoint, this would be a fantastic new ground system that, hey, it doesn't matter what satellite it is, we can get the data off of it, we can give it command and control, we can do the things that we need to do to make it operate, and if this ground system isn't working, there's another 150 like it. We can make that happen, and there are techniques and methods to make that all work. But the from here to there path is mired with details and challenges, and we're gonna have to get there, but SMC isn't going to get there alone. We don't go anywhere alone. I remind our folks that, with very few exceptions, we don't turn many wrenches. We don't actually build many things. We establish partnerships and relationships with people who do that and do it extremely well. And our way ahead will be marked by teamwork, tenacity, and just technical excellence. It's the way of our past, the way of our future. We're just going to have to think of the problems differently. But it's what our mission needs, and it's what our citizens really demand. We've got to get, we've got to build on the past, not get stuck in it. The team that's going to do that is made up of SMC, NRO, Air Force Space Command, and for the most part, the people in this room. I'm I'm very happy to be on that team with you. And I challenge you to think of better and more effective ways to do business for our nation, because our nation needs it. So with that, I thought I'll take a few questions. I'm not sure that I'm overly equipped to answer them, but I've kind of been watching this area from actively from both D.C. and now here for better part of 9 months. So what can I do for you?
So questions, please come up to the microphone. Judy.
Hi. Thank you for your speech, sir. This was really very inspiring, but we hear a lot of really moving in the right direction from leadership, but funding goes down to the programs, and they have a narrower focus. And I'm wondering how you think the enterprise can move to incentivizing the lower levels to move in the direction leadership sees as the right direction.
I knew you were going to ask that hard question about the money. You know, I think that I'm going to give you a little bit of kind of the look over here. There's an element of things. We can look at these problems and say we're overconstrained, you know. And my favorite story about overconstrained, and I'll come back to specifically what we're talking about, but is the story of, you know, what's the most overconstrained industry, and you know, in the nation is typically the airline industry. And yet the one company or one of the airlines has been in the top 10 of profitable companies year after year after year. You know, and that I don't know if that's I've got the stats exactly right, but Southwest Airlines, then they describe their business model. They don't feel that overconstrained. They look at opportunity. I think we've kind of got to shift our mindset a little bit on funding. It doesn't solve it. You know, there is definitely a funding challenge, and I got to be careful because it's a public environment. It's like in particular, the ramifications of sequestration, if we go back to that, will delay things pretty significantly. If we go back into that line-by-line cut mindset that sequestration demands, I mean, it doesn't really give you an option. It says every production or R&D line, you have to take a percentage out. If we have to go there, that what Secretary Carter, I think, described as the worst of all options, you know, it's going to delay things and make it difficult. That said, I find it interesting that we have the ability to do things in small programs for not lots of money, and often those programs are classified, and we don't do a very good job of telling that story. You know, we say, you know, hey, we did this, but you know, sometimes I wonder if the classification is less about the mission and more about don't tell that story. You know, geez, they did that for 1/10 of the money it took over here. But I can point to examples like that in our business today, where I'm like, you know, that's really cheap, getting to that capability by comparison to these, you know, large overall structures that we have put in place. I think it's going to be less about the money and more about the thinking. Now, that's not a free ride, because the thinking process is broken. I mean, that's probably too harsh. It's so deliberate that it's hard to get to an innovative solution. It's sort of the answer of it's kind of the committee answer. You know, everything is by committee. That means you're not going to make bad mistakes, but you're probably not going to get brilliant either. And I think we're going to need brilliant. I think we're going to need some really sharp thinking, and it's going to be hard to get that past that. So I think we're going to need some models that allow decision making at lower levels, And if we get that, I think we can solve some of the money issues. Right? Mike?
Yes, sir. Mike Moran, Harris Corporation. Sir, I was curious, as much as the forum is focused on technical, a lot of the challenges as organizations are set up, as you look at an enterprise ground architecture, contrasting that with programs that are largely vertical, their funding is vertically aligned, their approvals are vertically aligned. What activities can we support, and what activities is SMC taking to try to drive organizationally, programmatically, an enterprise-like look at the ground architectures?
I think the answer is to follow closely what's going on at Kirtland. I think that the study efforts that are looking at bringing that capability and where we're going to start looking at legacy satellites and moving them into that kind of into that modular MSOC that's out there. I think that's where the leading edge of this is going to be. I don't know that I want to, or that I would have much success at assailing the vertical integration of the large programs that we have. I mean, and back to the money issue, and unfortunately, those 4 of those main monolithic programs take like 85% of my budget. But I think that we're going to, so there's going to be 2 parts to that. One is that kind of leading edge activity that I think Kirtland will push out for the command. There's some work being done by NRO as well. I think that's driving that direction. But yes, but at the same time, I think we're going to have to look within those larger programs at how do we start putting in the hooks to allow that enterprise to come along. I don't want to tear down SIBRs. I don't want to tear down GPS. Those are fantastic systems. But as I move forward, I want to start building in a little bit more agility. That's kind of how the devil's in the details. How do I make that happen? I think that there are some things that the government will be working very hard on, and a lot of it's data oriented. Making sure that we have the rights to the data and an understanding of how the data need to be used and manipulated. But I really think the leading edge activity will be at Kirtland. I think that it'll be incremental improvement within the larger programs, which admittedly are vertically integrated.
Thanks, sir.
Sure. Sure.
Hi, I'm Carl Sunshine from Aerospace Corporation, and I wanted to ask if you might go down another vector that you've mentioned this morning, a little bit more for us. We're fortunate to have a lot of folks here from international organizations and locations, and some of those things you're seeking a path forward on, more affordability, more enterprise orientation, could perhaps be achieved if we have more international collaboration. We need anchor stations in countries around the world. If we want resiliency, maybe we need to depend on each other's systems. Could you maybe outline a little bit for us where we might be going in an international perspective?
Yes and no. So here's the I don't feel like I'm in a position to tell you where we are going, but I can tell you McMurray's thoughts on things we need to think about, and I tell you that in my background of again back to that F-16 environment. I had 19 countries in my organization. Physically, they had representatives there every day. Spent a year in Iraq working with a multinational coalition, and I think that we've got some challenges in terms of dealing in that international environment, and in particular, our policy isn't very good at enabling it. I think we know that, and I think that if you get a chance to ask, Doug Lavero will probably be out here sometime. He's at OSD Policy. I think what he'd tell you is that we've got to look for more opportunity to collaborate internationally. the restrictions that we tend to run into are kind of strange, and I think they are. I think we get a little bit overwrought about them. I think that we've got to make international cooperation and collaboration kind of integral to the systems as we move forward. But when you start to do that, you start to run into things like, I'm going to use it incorrectly, but almost like ITAR restrictions. I'm sorry, that's a technology issue that's space, and therefore it's on the verboten. You can't share that, and you can't work, and it has to be domestic launch. It has to be domestic providers, and I think that that's unfortunate. I think that we are at a time that we're going to have to relook at that policy. I think we're looking at it slowly, but I don't think that we're quite ready to look at it in a more holistic manner that I think we really need to. Personally, I mean, when somebody, I said, we've got 38 GPS satellites. Somebody looked at predictions. There's going to be 160 or so navigation system satellites up, in the next several years. You already, if you're like me, carrying around one of these phones, that phone already works internationally. It works with with the different nav systems, the European system for sure. So I think that we've kind of got to normalize space, and kind of bring it back out of the, and look at in terms of domestic concerns and national concerns and protecting technology. I think we've got to look at it as, it's not so much about a no foreign contact kind of policy, and I think that we're moving that way, but we're moving slow. I'd like us to move a little bit faster because I've seen the advantages of those coalition engagements and that international cooperation. I think there are a lot of things that can be done there. But as you've seen in some segments of our business, there are some backlash to that. We've got to have that independent capability, but at the same time that cooperative work. I kind of talked around a little bit because I'm really not a policy guy. I don't get to say, hey, it's a little bit of Robert McMurray's opinion, but I think there are opportunities there, and our policy makers will start looking at that, I think.
Thank you.
All right.
Good morning, General. My name is David Conway from Kratos. And I've got a question about commercialization. It's been a topic for a while, and there's barriers to commercialization. Some are con-ops, some are technical, some are legal. And I'd like to have a better understanding of what SMC's view is and what they're doing to overcome some of those barriers, to maybe put command and control into the hands of an owner-operator, and as a cost savings measure perhaps, and to take that out of the hands of maybe some of the blue suit operators. GPS and WGS were a couple examples that are sometimes talked about, so maybe using those as examples.
I wouldn't say there's a move afoot to do it, but to a degree I think that it's something that we need to look at. It falls into that category of one of my compatriots at Lockheed, when I was working on the Sivers program, had a poster on his wall that said, "Sacred cows, they make the best burgers." And I think that this government-operated and government-executed aspect of it is a bit of a sacred cow. We outsource a great number of things, and I think that we really probably do need to look at commercialization in areas where we haven't in the past. The trick is in the requirements. It's always there. I mean, it's the A76 study was the classic story of we're going to have some base function that we've always done by the government, and we're going to send that out and put that out for bid to commercial solutions. And then you find out, gee, that's not anything close to the level of service we had before. And because we're pretty lousy at writing in what the requirement is and getting bids on it, and eventually you could solve that, but that gap in the middle scares everybody. I think that when you're talking about something that's delivering an essential warfighting service, that makes us nervous. As an example, we don't for the most part, commercialize flight line maintenance, but we do it in Air Training Command, or Air Education and Training Command. It can be done. It's a challenge. I think we probably ought to be looking at it, but it probably is a little bit in that sacred cow category. It may actually, there may be some great payback, but in terms of the political fight, and I don't mean that in terms of, you know, of which side of the aisle are you on, but more of just the getting support for it within any large organization. That's probably not an easy one. I think it's something that we ought to be looking at, and the real compelling argument is efficiency, is cost. Maybe one more?
General McMurray, just one quick question, folks. I'll go there.
Okay. If you take that mic and wrap it around the other one, it'll be perfect.
It was a nice try.
There you go.
So you talked about the cost of ground system operations as involving people. You mentioned the number of people operating various constellations and how that compares to the commercial marketplace. Could you talk about the appetite for automation, getting the human out of the loop, the discussion of, some people believe that computers make fewer mistakes than human beings. They're different mistakes, but arguably fewer. So where are we on allowing just the computers to run the satellites and having a human on the loop rather than in the loop?
I'm not sure that I'm really qualified to answer that, but that's never stopped me in answering anything. So let me suggest that what I've got as a feel for the way the organization feels about that right now. I think that it's much akin to the look at how we fly drones. Is that is if you think about moving something from A to B, we aren't willing to just hand that over completely. But there's a level of automation that makes things a whole lot easier. So I think that we're a little bit torn. And then we're torn in the sense of we know this would make life a lot easier to automate a lot of this stuff, but we're scared. Scared isn't the right word. We're appropriately, mission-wise cautious. There's something like that. It's a little bit of a fear. It's like our fear is that well, now we're vulnerable. We're vulnerable to making mistakes because the computer may make a mistake, and then you don't have anybody to blame except some, coder who is 4 generations removed, from what happened. Doesn't mean it'll make more mistakes than humans. It just is concerned. It doesn't add that human judgment in an environment that is distinctly human warfare. It's about bad things, and about difficult challenges, and we have this reluctance to put that out of the hands of humans. I think also, as we talked about cyber and IA threats, that particularly not having that manual method is considered a challenge now, and I think there's also a fear that it's a one-way door. The minute I go there, the minute I go automated, I can't go back. I don't think that's true, but I think that's the sense of what people have, is that you're going to automate, you're going to limit, you're going to lose all your expertise, and then you're going to need those people, and you won't have them. You're going to, or you're going to put it out there, and it's all going to be automated, and some cyber virus is going to, some computer virus is going to wipe it all out. You can't get there from here. What are you going to do when it makes a mistake? Who's accountable then? Those are the kind of fears that stop us from thinking about that. Now, I think they are just that. They tend to be fears, and that we're going to have to look at that capability. Just much akin to manufacturing. There's a reason we use computer systems to that. They make fewer mistakes. They do it the same way every darn time. If you take that variability out, Yeah. Now, there's a real question: is that the best way to fight a war? That's if you're looking, but if what you're looking is for dependable and efficient, I think we got to go that way. All right. Well, I hope I gave you at least a few things to think about. Now, I'm gonna go back before I leave because I feel obliged to say a couple of things. Do not take anything that I said as an insult or a slap to the people who built and the teams and companies that built the fantastic systems that we have today. They are just that. They are the things of science fiction only a few years ago. We have great capability, and I'm very proud to have been part of bringing that on. Second, I'm not a policy guy. I see areas where policy can evolve, and there are a lot of differing viewpoints on that. I personally have seen the value of international cooperation, but those are challenging political works that need to be done by the policymakers. But in the end, I absolutely believe that what we have to do is really good thinking, really hard, difficult, technical work to bring on systems that we really don't have a clear picture of today in our heads. And if we don't do that, we're going to have the systems of 50 years ago and tomorrow's fight, and it's not going to be a good story. So you're part of the solution. I'm glad we're all part of the same team. Thanks.